that email. Did y'all get my email? Did you do it yourself? Haven't done before tomorrow, please. We're gonna go over to tomorrow.
We need to speak up since it's so far away.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, because I have such a nasty voice. Where is it at? Where is it at? I lost it on my computer. Alright guys, welcome to video 3. And this video is called Reporting, Progress, Monitoring, and Adjusting. So it's just an extension of my Prairie View practicum. So currently right now I'm an intern at Prairie View A&M University. And this is a part of my principalship. Okay. So I wonder if I can just touch it. I can just touch it. Just touch it.
Swipe.
I think if you swipe.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So go back to our group norms, just because it's been a little while. We disagree with opinions, not people. Be positive and present, and we all have valuable information to share. Okay. Who's in the room? So I'll start off. So I'm Urshel Plummer. Currently, right now, I am in a ESL position in science. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. This is my 6th year in education. That's the first time teaching 10 years in general. And I've mostly worked in SPED, except for this year I did ESL, which sometimes I've done like SPED and ESL. I've always had like the ESL kids, or, with SPED. So this is the first year that I've actually had actually no SPED paperwork. And yeah.
Preston Broussard, science, this is my 4th year in education. I've kind of had everybody, high kids, low kids, SPED, ESL.
I'm Haley Allison. I teach Algebra 1. This year is my first year teaching Algebra 1, but I've been a math teacher for about 9 years. And so I've got all the advanced math students this year.
Great. I'm Taryn Kanik. This is my 9th year teaching, but 8 years record. I started off in early childhood education, EC through 6 is my certification. Also, I got my ESL license, so I've had all ESL students for 2 years in all deemed 6th grade English and language arts, and now here in Katy at Taskett ESL, and I teach social studies for 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. I do mean that, because if you we're in the middle of STAR. We are all finishing up STAR review, so I do appreciate you taking time and finishing up, observation videos and things. And I'm actually really excited. Oh, also my site supervisor, he's not on this campus, but he is Mr. George Beckworth. And so what we're gonna do real quick is we're gonna review our data. We're gonna kind of review video 1, 2, and then we'll jump into video 3. Oh, also, who's in the room? So Mr. Bennett is our SPED teacher. Currently, he is in an art. He may pipe in the video a little bit later. I'm not sure, depending on how the art goes. If not, then I know he'll for sure be with our second session. Okay, so just review our data. I'm gonna look over here because it's kind of weird. I want to be more I wish that I could sit with y'all so I want this to feel more like a conversation, even though I record, even though this is for school, I'm really excited about some of the things that I've seen just around this. Like I said, I was very strategic when I picked the people. I know that you are department chair for math, and so you have influence over the whole building with math. And I know you're our second, department chair, behind the scenes. So, I'm excited about the things that I've been seeing, going on and the conversations that stem from here. So, let's jump into it. Let's talk about data. So, statewide data, TELPAS, beginning level is about 6%. Our intermediate level is about 36%. Our advanced level is at 44%, our advanced high level is at 14%. And one of the things we talked about today is a vast difference in our data from advanced to advanced high. You have about 44%, and then you drop down dramatically to about 14%. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to focus on. This is okay, but how do we get to great? Just talking about our campus specifically, so we have about 215 EV students growing. We know that number has changed, but for the sake of the validity, I pulled from the table reports. I want to use the actuality from the table report. So we have about 27% of students duly served in ESL and SPED, and then about 90% at our campus currently at advanced and our advanced high. So I just put this like point on it, and I was like, I'm not gonna put that on there. And so one of our key measures of accountability is our STAR test. Not our STAR test, excuse me, our TELPAS data. So let's just talk about a little bit about demographics at our school, just so they have an idea. Just for the sake of time, I'm only gonna talk about 8th grade because that is the only group that we focused on. That is the population that we focused on. That is the only population that we focused on for my data collection. So in 8th grade, we have about 491 students. Whew. They're actually the biggest grade, and that's about 36.1% of our school's population that had about 1,359. Again, like I said earlier, this number has changed. We're close to, if not at 1,500 students. We're busting out the seats here. Just for race and ethnicity, we have about 42.2% Hispanics, African Americans 29.9%, European Americans about 15.9%, Asians we have about 6.5%, 2 or more biracial students have about 5.2%, American Indian we have about 0.2%, Pacific Islander we have about 0.1% students. When we talk about sex, so we have about 49.5% females and 50.5% males, and economically disadvantaged we have about 59.2%, and at risk we have about 47.4%, and English learners 21.4%, special education 16.3%, and section 504 is 3.7%. And one thing that we talked about from video one when we looked at our data initially was that we have a very high special education population, but we also have a higher dually served population. So that's very important because all of us, even outside of our specialty roles, which is being mechanics, we have general education students, and in our general ed pop, that's where our dually served students mostly lie. And so it's just important to kind of have these conversations because our friends, not only are they struggling with the barrier of the language, but then they also have the cognitives or what other, disabilities that are impairing their learning as well. Any questions or comments about that? Okay. All right. Let me swipe. Okay. Purpose statement. So, conduct a needs assessment focused on improving ESL writing outcomes and moving students from advanced to advanced high on TELPAS. And we know that we did this across cross-content areas. Okay. Okay, come on, board. All right. At our campus, our students plateau in advance. So our video one, this is like the overview problem statement type thing. So at our campus, we know that our students are for some reason plateauing at advanced on TELPAS writing for whatever reason. And one of the things that we talk about is they need consistent vocabulary, extended writing opportunities, and increased engagement strategies to move toward advanced high proficiency. I'm not gonna read the purpose statement again because I just read that. All right, video 2. So, okay, so video 2, while video 1, we kind of like figure out what the problem was. Video 2 is about implementation, and I know one of the real things we talked about is what truly is gonna work for our demographic of students. Many times we go to professional development and they're like, oh, here's the keys. It's gonna unlock all the magical things of learning in your classroom. And we're like, girl, my kids gonna rip that stuff apart. You know, like the reality is that's not gonna work for our kids. And so what we wanted to talk about, like we talked about like what specifically work for our population, what specifically work for our classrooms, what specifically is going to work for our students. And that's something that we were very intentional about, and we had some very real conversations. And then we even talked about the whys. We talked about why, you know, even though we wanted to implement what are some of the barriers that were in place that were preventing some of these things. And so, very briefly, I know one thing we talked about, our strategies was interactive notebooks. Then we talked about weekly writing prompts. And then we also talked about introducing content-specific vocabulary. Going back to our interactive notebooks, I know like from what I've seen, like I've actually seen like people using them. Like I've seen it across, and it may not look specifically like how I intended it to look, but it's being implemented with fidelity, and they do work. Like when you give your kids some kind of piece, like, hey, I'm giving you the things, it is your responsibility to hold them to, because like we also said, these are 8th graders, and then whatever strategies, if we're not, if we're not more intentional, when they get to high school, will they have about 300, those teachers have about 300 kids a day, at least, maybe, with the rotations, depending on the size of the school, the high school they're at. They don't have time. They don't have time to make all these things. Oh, I lost them, I'm gonna make you another one. They don't have time. Like, you need to be able to get this, and you need to kind of get on the ball, because the reality is, I think high school, there's some of the tests either they have 45 or 15-minute blocks. That's not a lot of time. And so another thing we talked about was weekly writing prompts, because that's something that I've seen that worked for me. Giving them the writing opportunity. Sometimes we can't embed them into directly to our curriculum, because I know for science, a lot of ours is inquiry based. And I know you talked about it, and for yours, y'all, they're even tightening the way y'all curriculum is, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, the good thing about it, so we're essentially going to standardize math curriculum across the whole district. Like, we will be teaching from the textbook,
Okay.
but the textbook that has been selected, the publishers had actually reached out to the district a couple of years ago saying, we want y'all to adopt our curriculum. What do we have to do to make y'all do it? And so the curriculum directors for the district actually gave them a list of stuff that we would need to see in the curriculum for us to consider it. So they do have writing prompts, almost like language graphic organizers for a unit.
Okay.
So the entire unit, they have vocabulary, they have example problems, and that's just a little printout that you can give to your students at the start of the unit. It's very intentional about discourse and your questioning, so it does have some good pieces in there as well.
And I see even Miss Kennick, so I went around, I know that 8th grade actually came to see my classroom to see like how, like what was I doing specifically with my ESL students, and how could they take it back. And I've seen some of the things we talked about, I see they're doing them. Like they had like more interactive things, they had pictures, words, and they talked about the vocabulary before they began the unit. And I even seen them like, it wasn't a full-on like interactive notebook, but it was like little folders for the unit. And I'm like, hey, that works. That works. I mean, it's kind of like the interactive notebook, but you know, it's working. And then I even seen just the way that like initially at the beginning of the year I would come in, like it would be more of a lecture style, but then it would be more, it just began to be more interactive. They began to make things more live. So I do see that. I do see that in the science, in which tomorrow we'll talk about that more, and I'll put other pictures up there. We talked about introducing to content-specific vocabulary. And I will say this, so while we were going, like, talking about the things and like what worked, it made me also tighten up on my instructions. Like, while I was doing the things, I'm like, you need to make sure that you are doing things daily. Like, you need to make sure that what you're telling your teachers, you need to make sure that you're tighten up. And I think I was telling you, Broussard, about how my kids jump scores? Yes, so I was telling him from the beginning of the year, I wasn't doing these things. Until really tightening up, fine tuning, my scores jumped. One of my students, y'all, was at a 33, and at the last test we taken, I think they were at a 90. Did I tell you? They were at a 90 on a complete uni exam, just doing the things that I'm saying doing, and so they work, but we're gonna talk about that a little bit later, we're gonna talk more about that. Alright, so let's talk about, switch the slide, okay, so our observation study overview. So the purpose of this is to continue to analyze instructional practices, and promote that student engagement, context of classroom observations and video analysis, and our focus effectiveness of the strategies that we use. Like, was it fluff, or did we actually see change? I'll just say, spoiler alert, I've seen some change. Okay. Let's see. Alright. Problem identified, so low student engagement. I think, and I'm really kind of a stickler about student engagement, because I think just for the age group we have, they just don't wanna be bothered. But that does not mean that they're not paying attention and they're not focused and they're not engaged. But it may not look like the energetic conversations that we're having right now. You know, chime in, do y'all feel the same way? I just feel like 8th graders, I feel like they're so cool, like, they'll be grasping everything you say and just kind of look. And you're like, are you getting it? Like, is this boring? Like, what, what's going on there? So talk to me a little bit about that. What do y'all think about that? And then we'll get into the real numbers, your actual numbers tomorrow.
I do notice the low engagement, especially in social studies, for my especially in my male students, for my ESL students, they've been the low engaged, and there's only 2 of them in there, and they kind of, best friends, so one gets in trouble, the other one gets in trouble, and so it kind of brings their morale down, and then if they get in trouble, they have to come back, they have to make up all this work, and so it makes them even more or less engaged. I feel like they just feel that there's something on the horizon, there's something coming, there's a big change happening. Like, they're about to be going into high school, so they're low engaged because their minds are all focused on what's gonna happen next.
Okay, that's a different perspective. What do you think, Sir?
I think sometimes, like I said, I'm new to this, but I feel like sometimes the kids, they're looking to be entertained.
Okay.
And if they're not being entertained, they're less engaging. So.
I think, probably back in our day, you were engaged because you had to be.
Yes.
Like, there was no,
Option.
I'm trying to even think, like, were we allowed to retest when I was in school?
I don't
There
think
was no retest.
that wasn't for us. No, that didn't.
We had a lot more consequences because I feel like our parents and administration were a bit more united, and now we have to get creative because we either have, we have a bunch of wonderful parents, but then we also have parents who are either uninvolved or combative.
Okay.
And so we are pretty much the only people who can control some things, because we know once this kid leaves this classroom, they aren't doing anything. Or
Yeah.
they're not gonna receive consequences for something because they may get a detention, but nothing happens to them at home, so they don't care. So what I found was just figuring out like what the carrots are for my kids to dangle in front of them.
Okay.
And sometimes it can look a little bit more like, oh, you're being entertained, but right now, they're getting grouped based on how they did on certain concepts, as we do our EOC review. And right now, the engagement is the color group they are in. Because my green group, I check in on those kids more. They're the ones that needed a little bit more reteaching. My blue group, y'all have mostly got it. I need y'all to practice a little bit more. And then my purple group, y'all could teach this to somebody else, so I'm extending your thinking. I'm giving you all challenge problems.
Okay.
And so right now, the kids are engaged because they think how they do on a certain day determines where they go the next day. So my kids in the green group, they're like, I am dying to get to blue or purple. And I'm like, sweetheart, I'm looking at your test data. Like, it really depends on the concept. They don't know that. Like, they don't know
Yeah, they don't
why
know that
they
part.
are where they are. So they are almost like competing for something. And a
Okay.
couple of them are getting competitive. You're blue today, I'm purple, ha ha ha. And then they're like, oh, I'm gonna get you tomorrow. And so, but that's also, I've got a lot of competitive kids, so that was a little bit easier for me to get more bang for the buck without having to do a lot of the bells and whistles.
Okay.
But I do think they want to be entertained.
And I mean, that could go with the generations that we have.
Yes.
But then also, on the flip side, it could just be their personalities. Like, they're understanding and they're learning. I just don't want to, like, show you that I'm understanding and I'm learning. Because, like, my kids, like, y'all, it was one unit, I'm like, oh, it was acids and bases. You know, it was a whole bunch of, like, we had, like, 50 million labs for that unit. I don't think we had as many labs since this acids and bases. And they were just stone faced. And I'm like, are y'all understanding? Like, do we understand what's, I'm really about to translate into your language because I'm like, do you know what's going on? And they did great on their unit test, y'all. They blew it out the window, but they just gave me very F flat, very low effort. And so if somebody would have came into my room, they would have said, oh, she has low engagement. But in reality, I don't know, I've always kind of mean engagement. I'm like, well, that looks different for everybody, because right now I can say that all of y'all are engaged, and then some people say they weren't interested in your, you know, they were interested in your video, but then I do understand also that some of them got dang a little carried. We have the extrinsic motivation, and then somebody said like, hey, you just gonna get it together, and then the other one's like, behavior is a little bit of the problem, why we not engaged? So I think that is something to think about as we, like, the next steps. That's something for us to think about and talk about.
It is hard to assess.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we can just go into these because we've been talking about them. Students distracted or passive. We talked about that. My friend in here. This is my social time, and sometimes honestly, I kind of do feel bad for the guys because. And I think one of the reasons why we have it so rough in middle school, because elementary, you have so much freedom. Not necessarily freedom, but you have
time to play.
Yes, you have free time to play. But in reality, I think for our population, if we were to give them an extra break, I don't know if they could handle it. You know, I don't know if we gave them 15 minutes of a break, like, I don't know, and I'm even talking about middle school in general, just our population of kids, could they safely handle that extra time? Because they don't have a lot of time to social. That's why I try to have a lot of talking pieces in class so they can talk and work together. As long as like 90% of the conversation is about this, I do give them a little leeway time because they are at a very social age. And then need for intentional instructional strategies. We talked about that also in here. How sometimes they may feel the material is boring, but no, and I know, I think what was our most like Newton's laws. Newton's laws is not. There wasn't a lot of labs about it. I mean, you kind of got to know it, you know. And the kids were like, "Why do we have to know this, honey? Because if you fall off the chair, I need you to understand like what is going on." You know, even like when we first started doing X's and bases, and I'm like, because if you grow up and you get your own place and you mix ammonia, you mix bleach, and you close the door and you start mopping with that stuff, I need you to know what's gonna happen to you. You're gonna be somewhere laid out. And so we're just for the sake of time, we are gonna hold off. We're gonna hold off on the rest, and tomorrow we will bring in our real data. We will wrap this thing up.